Okay, so we're super excited to have with us on this show two of our favorite clients. We don't say that to anyone besides you guys, so don't listen to the other episodes. Steve Norrell and Lauren Lockpatten of Vocal Video. So what we're going to do is they have a really cool story where their founding team worked at the previous startup, and maybe you guys can correct me, it may be more than one, but at least the previous one. And then through a need they found at that startup, started Vocal Video. And we'll get into what Vocal Video is, but I'd love to start, Steve or Lauren, with just telling that founding story from TechValidate, what TechValidate was and what you guys did. And then we can transition into how you discovered this need for Vocal Video. And I want to get into some of the dynamics of starting Vocal Video and how you guys made it different than TechValidate. So could you tell us about TechValidate and what you guys ended up doing with it?
Vocal Video is all about like getting the band back together. And so from TechValidate, and in the case of TechValidate was a SaaS application, kind of a pioneer on this kind of customer evidence, customer proof SaaS for collecting evidence that was sometimes anonymous, but also sometimes named from all these types of like large enterprise tech companies and other business-to-business companies. And so we have all we're startup people. We all work together from, like the early kind of 2010-ish timeframe. And as we've kind of talked about, we worked on TechValidate through, for 8 years, and then ultimately sold to SurveyMonkey. And that ultimately became this like journey that we wanted to recreate when we started Vocal Video. And so you can look at Vocal Video both as a opportunity of like getting the band back together, but first and foremost. But then the second thing was we had done a lot of video testimonials. And since we very much believed in kind of customer evidence when we were at TechValidate, we had produced these things, realized how difficult they were. And we had this kind of gut reaction that we needed to be able to get more of these and get them more at scale. And so that was kind of the rationale for Vocal Video.
Yeah, and I would say we had done everything from me recording customers on an iPhone, trapping them at a conference, and then editing it ourselves, all the way to at SurveyMonkey. We finally got the awesome video team there to work on a customer video for us about a year and a half after I wanted a dozen videos, and made this beautiful video testimonial. One client probably spent about $25,000 in, combined travel and expense and coordination and salaries. And so we really saw this challenge of like, it's either super time consuming to get customer testimonials, or they're way too expensive for the number that you actually need to go to market. So we thought, and Steve, this was, the genesis of Steve's idea, but there's got to be somewhere in the middle where you can actually create the authentic videos you need to tell your brand story.
Steve, I didn't know something that I think you're alluding to, and I want to see if it's right. I thought it was the need for, it's so hard to make customer testimonial videos that started it. But the way you phrased it, you said it was really first just wanting to do the next thing. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two things. One was this team wanted very much to work together again.
That's really cool.
We've all worked together for the last now 10 to 15 years. And so like there's a lot of cohesion, there's a lot of camaraderie among that. And so that was kind of like the first principles when we were starting Vocal Video, is that we all wanted to work together again. But then when you're thinking about like what you're going to do, you need a tentpole. And the tentpole was this problem that Lauren's describing. We had tried to create, and we did create lots of video testimonials for TechValidate. And then even when we were at SurveyMonkey, this issue, like to put a finer point on it, the story is literally we sent a videographer to Australia to record and interview this one customer that we wanted to get on video. She came back. They did 2 to 3 weeks of video production on this thing, and I got the bill for $25K. and it was a beautiful 4-minute video, but it was kind of like, there has to be a better way on this.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that was like what resonated when it was like, we all want to work together. We've all seen this problem happen, and let's go kind of creatively try to solve it.
Yeah. And I think, the other thing about vocal video that, the part of our origin story was that I think that we all take for granted is that these customer testimonials really worked for us. They were the kinds of things our sales team really needed to convert buyers. We'd seen them have high engagement on the website. We knew that we knew intimately that demand, and our hypothesis was that was not just something in B2B marketing that was needed, but really a much more horizontal market where lots of consumer brands need these kinds of things as well.
And just so everyone else who's listening and watching knows, can you describe like this band that you brought back together? So it involves you guys, and maybe you can describe what your roles are now, and if it was the same at TechValidate. Maybe we start with what were your guys' roles at the previous company, and then who else is in that you wanted to bring back together?
Sure. So I'm Lauren. I started at TechValidate, and there were 5 out of 3 of the founding. So when I started TechValidate, I started this first customer success / marketing hire. I was number 5 to the company. And there were 3 of the folks who are now on the vocal video team there. So there was really only a couple other guys there that they're off doing their own companies now. They're really great. Lauren, I'm still running customer success and doing quite a lot of our marketing as well. And that's my happy place, is to be with my hands in many different parts of the business. And Steve, do you want to introduce yourself, what you do?
So Steve Norell, I was one of the co-founders of TechValidate. And the band that I guess I referenced was myself, Lauren, who, was the 5th hire. And then also my 2 other co-founders are kind of like the tent poles on the product and engineering team. So that was John Wolf and Jordan McKibble. And so collectively, vocal videos, it's essentially like 4 of the 5 folks that started TechValidate are now part of vocal video, and we're working together. So it's been fun. It's a fun journey, and it's a shared experience in that regard.
Yeah. I would say also, I've had the chance to see a couple of different companies over the years, and John and Jordan are just incredible. Like the productivity and just insane creativity of these guys. And also I think what is really fun about the entire team now is that we're all very clearly looking at the goal of growing the business, and everything we do in the product. Like we take a lot of customer feedback into account, and it's all about like delivering these results for customers and growing the business. And it's just like the lowest drama, easy thing that you don't have to spend any of your time like with the usual kind of stuff that the corporate stuff. You get to work together. So I think it's just like I wanted the chance to work with Steve again, but also just to work with John and Jordan, who are unreal in their productivity. I've seen their output rival much bigger engineering teams and design teams.
And engineering and product wise, is it still just them, or it's expanded now for vocal video?
No, it's just them. I mean,
Wow.
we're still a relatively small team. We're a 5-person organization, and then one of the we had a number of founding principles. One was we wanted to be 100% remote work organization from the beginning. That doesn't sound very radical now, but we started this before COVID.
Right. Same with us.
Yeah. So it was kind of somewhat of a radical notion back then. Not so much anymore. So that was principle 1. Obviously, principle 2, we wanted to work together, but we also come at this from a principles perspective, is that a small team can beat a large team. A small, cohesive well thought, where with each person complements the other, can beat a large team. And we've seen this throughout our career. So that was another key principle that was part of our kind of founding DNA. I'd say
why? Because of like nimbleness versus just the bureaucracy and slowness of a big team?
I think it's twofold. I agree that it's the agileness, the nimbleness, the ability to pivot quickly. But I think it's also, in software, there's the whole Mythical Man Month. And so like the more people you add, the more coordination that creates. And that also creates a tax on your ability to deliver and execute.
Wait, sorry. What's the Mythical Man Month?
Sorry. So in computer science, there's this guy that wrote this book called The Mythical Man Month, and it's all about these huge software projects that would always not be delivered on budget or on time, and it's basically it's probably a little dated now, but it's still kind of like the exact reason why like large software projects can oftentimes fail or just miss completely.
And I'll add two things, that we're just kind of knowing ourselves. Like everybody on the founding team knew they wanted to do work. We'd had the experience of managing big teams, but we were much happier actually having time to like do the work ourselves. And with this time around, we've relied, this has been a huge success for us on the marketing side, relying on folks like Grow and Convert for the content marketing rather than hiring in-house for content marketing.
Yeah.
We have a great guy on who manages our paid ad spend. He's an independent contractor. And then we've also done some link building with an outside agency. So I think, a big learning for me was to be able to leverage the expertise of these outside partners rather than really being focused on like growing the team. And that's a big thing that I saw at SurveyMonkey. Like it was like really important to have your big team and be hiring all the time. And what I've seen here is that you can just get so much value without the overhead of managing people day to day and their lives and their messy emotions, but also just a much better quality of output for, something you'd have to pay a really senior person a lot for in-house.
Yeah. I mean, Lauren, if you want to hear about our lives and messy emotions on our regular calls, like we're happy, Benji's happy to share that.
I'm low on corporate drama.
Yeah, we can bring in drama for you. We will happily do that.
I left SurveyMonkey and there was a little hole for me. And I had while my husband was I could get some corporate drama for him. Now he has his own small company. We've got nothing.
Oh no. Go ahead, Benji.
I just wanted to continue down this path because I'm really curious what lessons you took from TechValidate that you decided to approach differently at Vocal Video. So when you started this company, how did you approach things differently just from your learnings previously?
Yeah, I mean, it starts with the type of organization and company we wanted to build. In the case of TechValidate, we had created effectively an amazing product and a great kind of sales culture and sales machine there. We were in the TechValidate world. We were early on the kind of outbound prospecting and outbound sales, which now has kind of become very standard in the industry. We built one of the.
As opposed to what were people doing back then? Just for growth?
I wouldn't have thought that that's early at all. I thought people were doing that from the beginning of time.
It's interesting. I mean, there was a second wave that was kind of starting to hit in that kind of late 20 or around 2010, which was all brought on by this guy, Aaron Ross, who had started at Salesforce and built an outbound prospecting team. And he had this whole notion of the sales machine, which is what we patterned a lot of our outbound prospecting on. This was before all the tooling that now exists with Outreach.io and Gong and all these things that just didn't exist back there. So you had to actually kind of cobble together a whole process for doing this kind of multi-touch sequencing for prospecting. I mean, it used to be the cold calling 1.0 was like, hey, give me a phone directory and I'll just start dialing for dollars. We weren't doing it that way, but we had a very sophisticated way for both finding contacts and then reaching out in creative ways to ultimately generate demand. The point being is that TechValidate was completely different go-to-market motion than what we did with Vocal Video, which is we leaned very heavily. We said when we started Vocal Video, we made the idea that we wanted essentially a product-led growth type of motion where people could, the product was built from day one to be approachable, that you could sign up for it and get value pretty much instantly without any kind of high touch.
Why? I'm curious just why you didn't go the same route that you had gone previously with the outbound sales.
Well, you want to keep it different. So like I like new challenges, number one. Okay. But I think the other thing that's true was in my personal case, I had spent, when we sold to SurveyMonkey, over the course of my time at SurveyMonkey, I ended up inheriting and managing the kind of self-service business at SurveyMonkey. And so this was a product-led growth business that was doing, at the time, 250 million, 300 million in revenue. So it was a product-led growth business at scale. And I really got to see how a type of that business really operates. I think it's very different to when you're founding one of those businesses to go from zero to that level of scale. There's a lot of learning along the way. But you really saw the power of that model. And so that was one of the kind of founding principles as well, is like, we wanted to build a product-led growth business. We wanted it to be largely, if not 100% self-serve. We didn't want to be dependent on any one single customer. One of the things that's true for sales-led businesses is that, especially from an enterprise perspective, we were closing 80% of our quarter in the last 3 weeks of the quarter.
Yep.
Always. It is a very stressful business to be in, especially when you're trying to deliver that number. And you have to land a lot of planes at the end of the quarter. And so we said, hey, let's build if you can have a lot more customers at a lot smaller dollar amount, and those planes land just kind of constantly throughout the quarter or the month, that's a better kind of nice run rate, sustainable business. And so that was also kind of a clear thing that we wanted to do differently from TechValidate to Vocal Video.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that it gets back to as well is that we really wanted to keep the team small and be able to scale this into a big business. And at TechValidate, we were always dependent on hiring more. You can only scale a salesperson so much, even with all the whole set of tools that have come out in the last 10 years. Like there's always a breaking point. And the same was true on the customer success side. We had a very high touch customer success model. And it was like, at a certain point, you'd have to hire another CSM to keep managing your accounts. And so both on the acquisition of customer side, the onboarding and, and the customer support model, we have everything we're thinking about in terms of things that people can consume self-serve and actually get up and running within a couple minutes with the product.
Remind me, were you guys funded previously at TechValidate?
No, so that's also, we bootstrapped TechValidate.
Oh, you did?
So bootstrapped TechValidate for 8 years before acquisition by SurveyMonkey. Vocal Video is also bootstrapped. So, we're big believers, and that's another kind of principle of the company is just investing in profitable growth. So I've had experience at, kind of venture-backed startups, private equity-based organizations. Our DNA is to, we want our customers to fund our growth, and then that's a great kind of alignment with how we want to, build and grow the business.
Why? I'd love to dig in there. It is 100% aligned with Benji and I's philosophy, but I'm curious your reasoning for that. Like a sales-led enterprise SaaS business in the San Francisco Bay Area
I
in the
feel like
2000s. I'm speaking of TechValidate, not Vocal Video. And you don't take VC money. I mean, I don't know the statistics on that, but that seems rare.
Yeah, I feel like you're at a disadvantage just pure money wise.
Yeah.
We're contrarians.
Oddballs, yeah.
But I mean, your point is absolutely well taken. It's like we were a contrarian back then by building this whole outbound prospecting model. Basically, we did it on a shoestring in kind of Silicon Valley, and so it was zigging while most people in the valley were doing zagging. And
but why? There has to be another reason besides being contrarian. Was it just not like for me? I'll say, just to kick things off, the VC thing is like I don't know how to say this less crassly, but I enjoy not having a boss or a board to report to. I enjoy not having like some completely arbitrary growth target that if you grow X amount, but the growth target was X plus 5%, it's bad. Like to me, that's absurd. And then some of it is just lifestyle. And I'm hearing in a lot of your answers, it sounds like a lot of the principles in which you founded Vocal Video, or maybe even back to TechValidate, were like around lifestyle guiding some things. And I know that word where we are, San Francisco Bay Area and in tech hubs, it almost sounds like it's like an insult. Oh, they have a lifestyle business. How cute. Like we just raised Series A, and you're like, well, we have a business, AKA it makes money, as opposed to you have a company that spends money. Right. So like
one thing
it is just owning the business, right? Like having the faith that this business is, you're building equity in it over time, and you don't have to or want to sell off a bunch of it right at the start. So, there's certainly, I think the lifestyle part is well taken. I've also been inside venture-backed companies, and it's a way higher blood pressure to get to that milestone or die. Whereas if you're profitable business, you can invest back in the company, and it's just very like a lot more straightforward rather than getting on the treadmill. But I think part of it is just having, a real strong faith that this is a business that's going to work and make money, and have, that it's worth owning all of it rather than selling off a lot of it just from the very beginning.
I would just say that, like, I agree with everything you articulated about wanting to be your own boss, having the agency to create and build value for yourself and your family, and then also the arbitrary growth targets. The other thing I would add on at least TechValidate, and frankly, is a little bit of, it's not so much Vocal Video, but for TechValidate, when we started TechValidate, it was probably about the worst timing you could have as an entrepreneur. We started it at the end of 2007. And so about 9 months in the entire financial system melted down.
So we've been discussing this as a choice. This wasn't a choice. There was no funding to be had.
And we decided to just keep running right through the concrete wall is one way of thinking about it. Or you could say, hey, people were back then were worried about, living under freeway underpasses and eating cat food because they thought the world was ending.
Yeah.
We just decided to just kind of keep on, keeping on and just build it brick by brick. I mean, no one was going to give us venture funding in 2008 and 2009.
Yeah. If you're already eating cat food, that's not a good threat. Right? You're like, hey, I'm already bootstrapped.
Yeah. Yeah. We weren't eating cat food yet, but it was definitely a threat.
Well, one thing I wanted to bring up to you, just having worked for a few years in venture-backed companies, was one thing that you said earlier on kind of resonated with me, was just the small team strategic growth. And that's one thing that I've noticed is very different between bootstrap companies versus venture-backed companies. Venture-backed companies, I feel like they're throwing money at a problem versus because they have it, instead of figuring out how to solve the problems and then using the money to fuel the growth. I'm curious just if you have thoughts on that. And then I kind of want to transition that into like how you guys thought about marketing this business and growing this business from the very beginning.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts on the VC model is like you have to know if you're joining a VC backed company, that a good, I mean, you have to know the power laws of VC funding. And basically, if you're joining a VC fund company, most of those companies are going to fail, and that's built into the model. And so it's all about just as one of my mentors said to me, it's all about like going big or going home. It's all about like trying to grab the brass ring, and if you fail, you leave a big smoking crater. And so it's very like in a finance model, it's a very high beta type of opportunity. It's also if you're staking your career on that, it attracts a certain level of mercenaries where people just go from one to another, and if one doesn't hit, they just trying to basically punch their own lottery ticket. And that's not really our mindset. Our mindset is really more aligned with building something that's sustainable and durable and that has a lot of innate value for our customers. And then if our customers are successful, then we can continue to build the business up brick by brick.
This is so fascinating. I mean, I'm glad we're doing this because we had never stopped and talked to you guys about, I don't know, what we call this, business philosophy like this before. Yeah. I promise we're not trying to butter you guys up. Why do we need to? We've been working for like 2 years together, but that's very aligned with what we're doing and our philosophy in terms of, as Benji said, we have the freedom because we're not owned by anyone, because we don't have any arbitrary goals, a PE firm, blah, 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 to slowly solve the core root of the problem as opposed to just like throw money at it or what have you. And we then have also the freedom, or what I think is the most common sense thing, which is if you build a business with linear growth, that's not a failure. No. That's just a normal business. But it's only in this VC fishbowl lens that's somehow bad. And if you're not a unicorn, you failed.
I think what we saw, like when you're in it and it seems like things are going to grow forever, like, the last, which has started, with all these layoffs, is kind of see, it's like, it's just like, I think, there's tons of people who are just like, this can't ever go down. But what you see when you're just, in VC companies, you have to spend that money, like there's no, no, oh, I'm going to grow slowly. Like your board is like, more like growth at all
grow
costs.
Faster. Grow faster.
Why haven't you hit your hiring targets?
And on our side, we have seen that, and I don't want to insult any of our funded clients, but we've seen that very clearly in that it is way harder to work with VC funded clients. I mean, to a point where we know in our internal, like, we don't have an official, because we get to control everything, we don't have an official client criteria, but we have a very unofficial one where we discuss. And we just absolutely know that our best personas, the clients that stay with us forever, are self-owned. We're not VCs. VC funded, they're just switching things so fast. Everything is moving.
Super unrealistic expectations. So your growth goals around content are just crazy, and it makes no sense. And oftentimes they haven't done it themselves before. So they're getting some mandate from the board to do this initiative, and then they
be HubSpot.
Yeah, exactly.
Company, and that should equal. That's like people will not become a media company. That's
Exactly. It's very antithetical to how SEO works with the natural cadence of SEO, where you have to wait for things to rank. And that's a good transition to now marketing. So TechValidate grew with the sales team. And I should mention, Benji and I back in the day, that's where we met you guys. We actually went into the TechValidate office because back then we didn't have an agency. We thought we were building like a corporate marketing training organization. And then eventually most people didn't do what Lauren did in terms of hiring us for training. They just said, well, we don't want to train. We don't have anyone for you to train. Can you just do this for us? Can you just hire us? And I saw that like the floor of a lot of these salespeople. And then you go to Vocal Video, where it sounds like you make a conscious effort of saying, rule, not even effort. We're not going to have a sales team. This is going to be product-led growth, self-serve. The users will come in and sign up. Obviously, and we can talk about it in a second, we have worked with you guys on building the SEO or organic side of that. And we know from all of our conversations, you guys have done paid. Walk us back historically to the beginning of how you began to grapple with the marketing channel, like initial starting point in growth. Like, what were you thinking about once you had some product? That's a really, and Steve, you kind of alluded to this, that's a really hard, like, mental space to be in for a lot of entrepreneurs. They have a product and it just feels like this impossible thing where it's like, well, to succeed at these marketing channels, you need momentum. I have no momentum. So then it's like this, well, how am I going to do it? Yeah. How did you start thinking about channels and testing?
Well, so I think, it kind of comes down to this, like, and this is not my framework, but, there's a lot of people talk about like product market fit, right? Like, do you have product market fit? And this becomes this like huge umbrella term. And I think there's a lot more nuance to that. And so like I oftentimes, and this is by no means my invention, but I kind of look at the Reforge model. They have a kind of a more nuanced approach where they're like, there's a market product fit. There's also product channel fit. And then there's also like, does your product fit with your business model or monetization model? And does that also map to the market? And If you think about all those dimensions, like you kind of move through those choices when you're an entrepreneur just launching your first company or your first product. And I think we went through those transitions as well, which was after we launched, we felt like we had some kind of weak product market fit. We knew our customers, they were buying it, maybe not as aggressively we wanted, but we needed to then start to ramp up demand. And so
those initial customers, how did you get those?
So we did and this is probably a longer discussion of like how we did this, but it was a combination of Rolodex. We also did a kind of a long wait list while we were developing the product and built that up through some viral mechanics. And that allowed us to onboard, as different parts of the product came online, new kind of cohorts of users to kind of determine whether we were building the right thing. And then eventually at the end, we just onboarded the whole wait list and we launched and then began monetizing. So
we put everybody into a free trial seat at that point. And then, at some point there was the communication, like, if you want to keep using this, then you have to pay.
What was that delta between first launching and you have a few Rolodex free people to then like opening it up to everyone on the wait list?
What do you mean in terms of
time?
How long it took us to do that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it took us longer than we probably wanted to. I think we had a very ambitious product vision. So for example, TechValidate from launch to first customer ship was something on the order of 6 to 7 months. Here for Vocal Video, we were more, first monetization was more kind of like in the 12, 14 month time range. But we had, and so to mitigate that problem of not getting enough customer feedback, we still had customers on the product probably at 6 months. So we were getting lots of customer learnings. We just weren't monetizing until that kind of 12, 14 months.
So those were just the Rolodex contacts. They were using it for free.
At first, it was started with Rolodex, and then we started selectively picking out customers off our wait list and onboarding them. And the criteria was largely like, are these people, since the product wasn't fully baked at that point, it was like, well, are these people we can work with? And we were doing a much more of a high touch model at that point because we still hadn't built the full product-led growth onboarding bits of the product.
Wow, 12 to 14 months between launching the product and getting the first dollar of revenue from the first customer.
For bootstrap business.
Yeah, that's some patience.
I mean, it was the same with us. Ours took 18 months, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so TechValidate was a lot faster on that front. But this one was a more ambitious product vision, I think.
And tell me if this is not something you want to discuss or disclose, but were you guys just not paying yourselves at that point? Or was there some pool of money from the TechValidate sale that you were just using to like drip salary to each other? Or for 12 to 14 months, a lot of people would be like, well, or I guess maybe many bootstrap stories are that happens while the founders have a different job or whatever.
Yeah, and I think this is the benefit of coming off a second or third exit.
Yeah,
it makes it a little easier. Like I'm not trying to lie in the regard. Like the need to monetize quickly, we felt that much more probably for TechValidate. And if you either have to you either bridge that gap. Of one way is either get in market really quickly and sell, or you pre-sell the product, or you do some consulting to kind of pay the bills while you're building the product. Each way is viable. We're fortunate that we had a long runway, and I think the lesson for anybody starting a business is you need to have staying power, however you do it.
Yeah.
Because these things have much longer runways to getting to not only first revenue, but then profitability than you probably anticipate on the front end.
Yeah. Yep. We were the third category, which is consulting on the side while we grew our thing. Okay. So then back to marketing channels. So you open it up, there's some customers. Walk me through kind of the reasoning or maybe even what led to reaching out to us from the SEO side or the content side, and then how you guys started paid or whichever one came first.
Yeah. Well, we did a lot of banging our head against the wall with paid ads. And I think, so we had, kind of these three acquisition channels that we still think are really important. There's the paid advertising, there's content marketing, and the SEO that we still really believe in. And then also this word of mouth kind of product-led growth. And those were our hypotheses, but then it's taking those hypotheses and executing on them. So on the
why that channel mix before we get into like how it works now?
Well, I think for the paid advertising, our guess was this is a way to kind of jumpstart the cold start problem, right? To get our name in front of people. We had never had any success with paid search at TechValidate because no one was searching for what we could think of to call our company. It was this totally new category. But what we found over the last couple of years is people are really looking for video testimonials. They're looking for ways to solve this problem. And so, particularly on the paid search side, you can bring them that data. On the content marketing side, it's the dream to have leads or new customers, your cost of acquisition. If you do it right, it gets lower over time. And so we always had as a goal that would become a larger and larger part of our mix as we develop more content. And then on the product led, we have some intrinsic virality built into the platform, right? And we get a lot of customers who go through, see some of the vocal video branding on our lower tier plans and go sign up for a free subscription themselves to check it out, and those folks convert. And then also on our free plan now, there's a watermark in the video, so you can see, oh, this was produced with vocal video. I'm gonna go check that out. But yeah, I mean,
paid search, the banging your head against the wall. What? Just to be clear to everyone, you guys manage that yourselves, right? There's no agency.
We started out managing it ourselves and realized that like there's huge learning curves on just like each channel has its own, particulars. And that's when I think we eventually, through probably 6 months of, as Lauren said, banging our heads against the wall, we decided to ultimately find someone who was an expert in these channels and have them run it for us. And so the lesson was probably like, find an expert earlier.
And I can find, for us, like finding that expert who, his retainer is way less than you would pay an in-house person. His expertise is much higher than you could afford to get as an early company. Like, that was one thing. The guy we found is working. He's an integral part of the team as well.
Yeah. So just going back on one of the questions you asked, which was like, why did we have that kind of three pillars of our demand strategy at the beginning? Some of that was informed at seeing like a business like SurveyMonkey at scale. So, one of the things I know for seeing a, PLG led business was that 80% of, traffic, signups, et cetera, for SurveyMonkey was coming through organic search.
That's crazy.
And, it's one of the oldest sites on the internet. It has some of the best domain authority, et cetera, et cetera. And so you see the power of that, how that compounds. And granted, it's an older business. It's been around for 20 plus years now, but that compounding happens and it can be very powerful. Now, that 20%, which was kind of driven off paid spend and paid marketing, they were spending, at that time, the paid marketing team that was reporting to me was spending 18 million a year, I think. So it's not like that was a insignificant cost, but that's how a business of a very large size of, driving 300 million in top line, that's how it starts to look. And so you start to try to, as a founder starting off, you want to reverse engineer that. And that, I think that's frankly what led us early on to you guys, which was we realized that investing in content, investing in SEO was going to be a long game. Mm-hmm. And so, but we had seen kind of it pay off from the SurveyMonkey perspective. And so that was why it was one of the pillars that we kind of started the company around.
And that must be why you guys didn't say no or walk away. Now, my memory is really bad, so all three of you were also in these conversations, so you can correct me. But my memory is that we had, worked with you guys at TechValidate in this like corporate training thing, so we had that connection. Mm-hmm. And then you came and said, "Hey, we're trying this new thing. What do you think?" And we open Ahrefs like we do for any prospect, and we're like, "Oh, domain rating 9 or something." Wasn't it like that?
No.
Yeah. Yeah. Domain rating NA. No. And we were like, you guys, like, this is going to take a long time to see results. And that was our big fear. We were just like, are they going to last? Like, our biggest issue is, this is not our biggest issue. That's a totally exaggerated comment. But like, one big thing is just the patience of clients. Like, we're very confident in our process because it's very straightforward. Like, identify keywords where there's buying intent, rank for them. Like, that's not complicated, right? It turns out it's not normal, which is nice for us because we have a niche, because most people are just ranking for random stuff, and that's kind of a total waste of SEO spend. So we're confident in it, but not all clients are. And so there's sometimes just like this ticking clock of like, well, we've spent this much, it's 4 months in, it's 5 months in, and you're just like, trust me, like, we've seen this curve before, just stick with it. And that was our big concern with you guys. We're like, domain rating NA, like, it's going to take forever. And I think we said like 12 months, blah, blah, blah. Now it turns out, and you three can give your opinion on this as well, it turns out we got results way faster than any of us were expecting. Some of that, I think, may have been the nature of your product, that it's public facing and people are embedding these videos on I don't know if there were like, wasn't there natural links from that or whatever? Yeah. And so that helps a lot. But I'm curious, whatever you can remember or reveal about your discussions after our first conversation on your side. Were you guys just like, as you said, Steve, like, screw it, like, we're investing for the long game? Or was it secretly like, we're going to give them 6 months?
I was. I remembered that there was a question mark whether you were going to even accept us as
because we thought like we're just going to bang our heads against the wall, or we're going to start. Yeah. It's going to take forever, and they're going to be dissatisfied.
Well, the history is we've worked with companies that were kind of same situation, like just kind of launched, have a really low domain rating, and then I think when it gets into it, they just don't have the patience. So they'll churn after 3 or 6 months, and getting the domain rating up is the first challenge, and then it's getting the things to rank. And so, that I think we had just come off of working with a couple companies like that where we were starting to question whether this was the best customer for us. And so when you came to us, I feel like what gave us confidence was you've sold multiple companies before, you've built multiple companies before, so you already had the experience running a business and working in some of these channels before. And I think that made us feel a lot more comfortable.
Yeah. Or from a sales perspective, we were not in your ICP.
Correct.
No, you actually pattern matched to some aspects of our anti-ICP. But going back to the beginning of our conversation, I think the difference, Benji, is a lot of those were funded companies.
Yeah. Oh, that's true.
And so it's maybe that they, we were frustrated at their timeline, but, God bless them, they were probably getting pressure from their investors, and so that just passed through to us.
Yeah.
So it goes back to
we wanted to go, we would love
fast.
To. But I think we understood, and we had actually, we'd done a little bit of content creation already. We'd written sort of these more in that like vintage HubSpot model. These were top of the funnel articles where we're like, nobody's reading these. They're not going anywhere. So I think that and we knew from working with you in the past, like I just, I had the impression I was like, these guys are smart. They're not just trying to get you to rank for whatever. These are folks like on the team that care about getting qualified customers into the funnel, the folks that will actually become paid customers. And so I think part of it was, there was a little bit, we'd taken a stab at it, and it was just like the content was going nowhere. And part of that, is now some of that content ranks and some of it works, but it needed a lot of time. And, similarly to doing paid search, you folks had a strategy of building links and promoting the content that could kind of get it ranking faster than we knew how to do at that point. So I think that's, and just, the extension of having a team of writers to write the stuff. We spent a lot of time ourselves writing that content. It would, it'd take a very significant amount of time for us to produce the small number of assets that we made. And we calculated that our time was better spent doing other things.
Yeah, I'm curious, what do you think the difference was? And this is maybe where we can have the rest of the conversation and then close, is like, I'm curious just your perspective on our engagement in terms of like, it has taught a lot to us. I mean, we work 26 months, I counted right before we got on this. You learn a lot, and then starting with this low domain rating, you learn a lot. So we have our learnings from it, but I'm curious on your side, Lauren, we could start maybe with just where you were saying you guys had already done some content. Mm-hmm. What are differences and things that just our engagement has taught you guys about SEO, if anything? If your answer is nothing, you guys have taught nothing, that's totally acceptable. We just want honesty.
There's a couple of things that surprised me, right? Like, so, we had written 2 terms that actually had some search, had some, there were people looking for these things, more top of the funnel assets that we figured like this might attract a bigger pool, and some of these people might turn into clients, right? And I think that is really in the more, the kind of content marketing that was popular 5-10 years ago, where like everyone was vying to be HubSpot, and then they got to that model, they tried to do that, and they're like, oh wait, we actually need an entire team of people.
It's still popular. It could be 5 to 10 minutes ago.
And no one will ever become HubSpot, right? Like, especially not a 5-person company starting a business.
Yeah.
So I think what I learned that's been really interesting is that, it's like there's a real process to this, and we are not thinking about someone coming to check our blog to they're not coming to our blog like the New York Times. We are doing a sprinkling of bottom of the funnel assets that speak to different segments of our customers. And it's that very, very specific search where a person is there's very high intent for each of these blogs. And the shocking thing to me is like some of these blogs are very similar. We actually just had some customer feedback where they read one of your blogs, and there's this kind of like how-to guide to vocal video in a lot of the content that you're creating, and they were like, "This was super valuable." And for me, like if I were writing every article, I would be looking to create a very unique thing, just like a unique diamond every article, right? Where it's like I would be imagining that someone would be reading every single piece of content on our blog, and that's just totally wrong. Like that's not even our goal, right? We want to get the kind of content that is this high intent content out there. So that's been one of the surprising things for me, and I think the learning that has been like really fun and interesting is how our paid search can work together with the content we're creating, where we get that very quick way to test whether there is demand for something before we get on board with investing in the long time frame approach to content marketing. I can't even believe that how amazingly good user testing is with
I agree.
search. It is just the coolest thing, and I think you folks immediately were like took that on board and made that collaboration so valuable.
Yes, give me all the AdWords data.
Yeah.
Just like
I mean, just for everyone listening, what Lauren you're referring to is that often in our calls, when we're thinking of new keywords to go after from an SEO perspective, now it's become like rhythm because we know this. But at the beginning, it was like, well, what's working on the paid side? You'd say, well, this is working, that's not working, this is. And then we'd say, well, if that's working really well, let's attack it from SEO and basically get free clicks for that keyword.
Yeah, and as you guys were testing different use cases for the product and trying to expand, the Google ads really informed whether it was going to be good for us to create content around some of those keywords or not. Super interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and this may be a little bit of orthogonal, but like one of the evolutions for us on the paid search and paid marketing is that like we're not only buying potential customers and signups, but we're also buying data, and that data informs not only what you guys are writing and our content efforts, but it also helps us kind of tighten or quicken the loop on product feedback to see where we're falling down or what use cases aren't fully resonating and where we need to do some work. So I think that's been kind of a nice virtuous cycle that we've got kind of going across the variety of the kind of the channels and the team here.
Yeah, I actually feel like that's somewhat unique to you guys. I actually haven't found too many companies that think of Google Ads that way, where they're using it to like create a landing page, test out a specific use case, run ads against it, and see if you can expand verticals or expand into different use cases. I found that's pretty forward thinking, and it really does help us on our side just know where to focus and what works. And I'm sure just from a product perspective, it really helps inform features and how you're going to position the product and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, because as an early company, you can go out to your friends and family or your friendly early customers and ask them if they like the idea of something. But actually, from the product development side, like we can go out and test something that's a bit of a stretch for us. And understanding we've made a big push into being a company that can work with international customers, but we were able to test whether there was a demand in international markets before we did things like work on the ability to localize video collection, add different subtitles, all of this stuff that took engineering resources and design resources to do. But we had gotten validation from people that actually ended up becoming paying customers, even though we were like a full English only operation at the very beginning. We've gotten validation that there was a demand there.
Lauren, one thing you said I wanted to ask about this bottom of the funnel, that you had written these top of the funnel posts before you worked with us. Was the idea of using content or blog posts to go after these very, as you're saying, repetitive bottom of the funnel, high buying intent terms, was that even in consideration on your radar? And I ask that because for a lot of companies we talk to, they think of that as stuff that only the marketing site can or should rank for. Like anything that has blah, blah, blah software for their niche, they're like, no, that's for my homepage or my like product specific feature page. And then blog content is all what you're calling, Lauren, like HubSpot top of the funnel type content. They think of it in these buckets, and we have to kind of shift that. And I'm curious whether that was true for you or not.
Well, it's hard for me to remember back then. I mean, the thing is, before we begged to work with you, we
that's not true.
Content, and we were trying to do it, right?
Yeah.
But that we were, I'd say, the thing is that I think we were very much bought into this idea of the bottom of the funnel content creation, but we were only two people with a big day job trying to work on that. And so where we felt why your business is successful, like we were really like, it's kind of hard to do it when you're doing it for the first time. And you haven't seen all the patterns, that you folks have seen across the customer. So I think we already, we would read the articles. You guys are like giving away your strategy all over your website. But I think, where the connecting the dots between believing that and then being able to execute that in a programmatic way where it's happening all the time, that you're building this big base of content to go after all these different use cases and keywords. So we were falling flat.
Yeah. Well, this is an awesome story. It is awesome working with you guys and watching and being a part of this growth from domain rating not existent, domain rating error to now. What are we at? DR? Benji, you memorize everyone's DR.
I don't know, like 40 plus, I would say.
Yeah, 40 plus.
You're 60.
Wow, you're 60 now?
We're at 60 now.
Yeah, and
just kidding.
And seeing all the rankings, so we're excited to keep going, and thanks for taking the time to talk to us.
Yeah, well, it's been a total pleasure, and I still, gotten the chance to work with other marketing agencies, and you folks are, one of the reasons we came to work with you is just like the absolute no BS agency with we feel real alignment in our goals working together.
We're gonna splice this local video style and just play it on loop on our homepage of Lauren saying that. We'll just put a headline:
the no
BS agency.
There you go.
Got it.
That's your marketing tagline for the next year.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.
I do want to second what Lauren said, and we really appreciate you guys being on the journey with us, and we look at it as a journey. And you guys have been huge partners in terms of both moving our thinking forward, but also helping us grow the business, and so that's really meaningful for us.
Yeah, I feel like the learnings have just been as great on our side, just as it has been on yours. A lot of surprising things that, I don't know, it gives us the ability to test different things that maybe, I don't know, you challenge us on a lot of the phone calls too. And so like keywords that you might not have thought would be good end up working, or different pieces and all that kind of stuff. It's really interesting to learn on our end as well.
And I should say for everyone, Steve is the single best Google Data Studio expert client we have ever worked with. He has the entire all business metrics in the most neatly color-coded Data Studio dashboards I have ever seen. It'll be like, actually, if we look at this month and this channel, it's 35. It's really good.
Well,
right, thanks for that,
I've learned, frankly, I learned that data is a weapon. And that's also another lesson from SurveyMonkey is like all of these, hypothesis testing experiments that we're running, whether it's on a channel or a marketing campaign or in the product, we then have that data. And then as long as you can interpret it and apply kind of a creative lens, it helps you kind of figure out where the pockets are, to drive the business.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And I like pretty graphs.
All right, thanks so much, guys. We really appreciate it.